Are we ready? Are you guys tired of me talking? Do you want to hear the first presenter?
Yeah.
Can you say it a little bit more loudly? Do you want to hear the first presenter? Okay.
First up, we have Sam Harmet on the musical hybridity of Klezmer music.
All right. Hello, everybody. We're going to get into Jewish music a bit tonight. All right, so I'm going to be talking about hybridity in Klezmer music. This first picture here shows David Krakauer, a very famous Klezmer clarinetist, sitting alongside Fred Wesley of James Brown's band. So even from the get-go. So what's Klezmer? A lot of people initially are going to be wondering, what is Klezmer music? And it's the music of the Jews of Eastern Europe. It's in some ways a historical performance. Obviously this music doesn't exist in its original context anymore, but originally it was used during rituals like bar and bat mitzvahs and weddings. Sometimes even used by non-Jewish people who wanted a little parlor music. The people who played it were Klezmorim. And they, in terms of their lifestyle, the music they played, and their outsider status, they have a lot of similarities to the gypsy musicians, who are a little more well-known. That's a typical band of Klezmer from the 19th century. Song I'd like to play for you. Well-known Klezmer classic, the Hava Nagila before there was a Hava Nagila. So Klezmer is by its very nature a music of hybridity. The earliest forms of it were a mix of the Jewish liturgical music along with popular musics of the region. A big change in Klezmer happened when it arrived in Amerika. And as Jewish immigration grew in the early 20th century, a lot of Klezmer made its way to major American cities like New York, Boston, Philadelphia. There's an early 20th century Klezmer band right there. This is a recording from a band in 1940 doing Dayenu, a very popular Passover song. And as you can hear, this is done very much in the style of like Glenn Miller, like a big swing band arrangement. And this was sort of reflecting the assimilationist tendency of Jews at this time. After that era, we arrive at the hibernation of Klezmer. And because there was such an emphasis on assimilation in the Jewish community, Klezmer kind of disappeared and was really only played by the old-timers in hotels in the Catskills for a number of decades, just to an audience of old Jewish people. Then along came the Klezmer revival, and this person pictured here is Hank Sapoznik, one of the people who was in the 70s sort of a countercultural folk musician playing bluegrass and Appalachian music, and many of them who were Jewish decided they would take a look at their own roots. So a lot of the earliest Klezmer revival musicians were, before that, just American folk musicians looking for their own music. Since then, we have had a flourishing of bands that are doing sort of Klezmer plus whatever. This picture here is, it's David Krakauer of the Klezmatics, Canadian hip-hop Klezmer musician, and Fred Wesley. This group is one of the most famous of the Klezmer revival. The Klezmatics were a New York group, and they're famous for singing songs in Yiddish about marijuana, gay culture, and their distrust for religion. These are the New Orleans Klezmer Allstars. They're from, obviously, New Orleans, and they were doing sort of a mixture of New Orleans brass band music in Klezmer, and through a sort of schedule of relentless touring became quite well known. They've played all the big festivals in America like Bonnaroo. This is John Zorn and Masada. Most people know him for free jazz, and he's very famous in the New York downtown scene, but also has a project of Jewish music he calls Masada. And they use the modes of Klezmer in a sort of free improv context, a lot of free jazz. Still got it? This is my own group. We're on a much smaller scale, obviously, but we're called Shtetl Blasters, and we now live in different parts of the world in the U.S., but we still record together, and we do like Klezmer with Electro and free improv. This is Daniel Kahn and the Painted Bird. He's from Detroit originally, but now lives in Berlin. And this group does, it's a mixture of klezmer and sort of performance art. There's definitely a real like sort of Tom Waitsy vibe to what they're doing, but pretty interesting and pretty radical stuff. This is Socalled. He is a klezmer hip-hop artist, also working with David Krakauer and Fred Wesley. On his own, interesting performer, and a pretty good amateur magician as well. Special little talent. Good taste in Vikings, too. This is Ramzailech, and this is sort of showing the spread of klezmer music. Traditionally, it's been, in the last 50 years, a real American form, but recently it's been picked up in Israel a little bit, which is traditionally been a little divorced from Yiddish culture, so it's kind of cool to see it taking roots in Israel as well. Even in Europe, this is a French band called Anakronic Electro Orkestra, and they're doing a bit of klezmer mixed with contemporary electronic house and electro production, and there's somehow room for these people in Europe. So there's a lot of diversity happening, not just in America, but all over. Even more unusual than a French klezmer band is Aufwind, which is one of the more famous German klezmer bands. And a lot of non-Jewish musicians in Germany have gotten turned on by klezmer. And, you know, obviously ethnomusicologists and anthropologists love thinking about this, because how weird is it that German musicians are playing klezmer? But finally, the Terk in Amerika, I thought this was like a nice little song to finish on. This is a klezmer standard, but it's equally well known by people of the Greek and Turkish world, because it's also a Greek and Turkish song called Ulan Ulan or Üsküdar. Famous version in the klezmer world was recorded by this guy Naftula Brandwan in 1920. I'll do a quick rendition for you on mandolin.
Does anyone have any questions about Klezmer music?
Any questions about klezmer? What makes klezmer music klezmer?
While it may sound similar to other regional styles like gypsy music or, in the last case, Greek and Turkish music, I think the thing that makes klezmer unique unto itself is the fact that it is Jewish music, and there is like a real influence of the Jewish liturgical canon as well. If any of you are familiar with the Jewish religion, most synagogues will have a cantor, somebody who's just appointed as the singer of the synagogue. And a lot of klezmer melodies are played in a way that's trying to sort of capture the vocal spirit of a cantor. So a lot of the embellishments you'll hear in Jewish vocal music in the temple are the same embellishments and sort of stylistic flourishes you'll hear in klezmer music. So in that way it is unique and definitely separate from similar gypsy and Greek or Eastern European music.
Chris, you have a question?
It seems like a lot of the sort of revivalist klezmer bands are quite sort of radical. We were talking about the Klezmatics being sort of almost anti-religion and sort of pro-queer, and then you had, I know Socalled is pretty out there. And again, is there a connection between the old school klezmer guys who are still sort of liturgical and maybe religious and the sort of new wave, or is it sort of two totally separate?
Okay, the question was new radical klezmer music, not very religious. How is it connected to the old school klezmer music?
Yeah, there's very much a connection. I think a lot of people, even coming from the radical position like the Klezmatics, they still really value the tradition. Throughout, no matter how radical, among most klezmer bands, there's a respect of this received knowledge from the past. I would say, even though it may be radical, there is a lot of reverence for the traditions. And klezmer has always been a secular music. Even in the old world, it wasn't the music of the temple. It was the music of parties. It was the music of festive gatherings. And even if you look back at the classic era, like with Naftula Brandwine, that guy on the last slide, he was infamous for being a crazy drunk and just getting into all kinds of trouble, and people could barely work with him. I mean, the klezmer musicians in general have been a little bit on the fringes of Jewish society.
So were you like a seriously badass kid growing up studying the klezmer music? What was that like?
Oh, you know.
When did you start learning klezmer?
I got serious about it in high school, but I had been exposed to it from a younger age. And in middle school, I actually played clarinet, and I loved listening to the klezmer clarinet style when I was, probably 12, 13 years old.
Yes?
Do you play any shows here?
Do you play any shows here?
Yeah, I do. Not a lot of klezmer, but I sometimes, I'll be doing some klezmer stuff with Sebastian Adno. I don't have a date that I can tell you right now, but we're around town. Seb and Sam is the name of the duo. We'll do some klezmer stuff.
We'll put it on a Facebook page. One more question? Any more questions?
Yes.
What's the meaning behind the name of the band that you're in?
What's the meaning behind the band you're in?
Oh, the name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shtetl Blasters is a play on Ghetto Blaster, and Shtetl is the Yiddish word for village. So.
There you go.
Isn't ghetto a Yiddish word? What does ghetto mean in Yiddish?
Ghetto's not Yiddish.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was just like fiddler on the roof and stuff. And, all right. Okay.
Ghetto is an English language approximation of Shtetl.
I think you're conflating two ideas here.
No, it comes from shtetl. We can't pronounce shtetl, so we say ghetto. Thank you. Round of applause for klezmer music.